before the Vesuvius eruption. We're not going to start with ashes or destruction. We're going to see it working with the open forum, the furnaces lit, businesses running, and the Vesuvius in the background, like just another mountain in the landscape. And that's the most powerful part of this story. Pompeii didn't disappear in the middle of a war or as an abandoned city. It disappeared on a normal day, which is why it's still so impressive. Because before the disaster, there was a routine, and that routine can still be reconstructed with considerable precision from the streets, buildings, and everyday objects preserved by the eruption. Pompeii wasn't a secondary corner of Italy. It was near the Bay of Naples in a fertile area, connected by land and sea routes, and had been growing for centuries. On a mix of Samnite, Greek, and Roman influences, Drovish influence. By the time Rome finally imposed its control, the city already had a history behind it. It didn't start from scratch, it adapted. You can see that in the forum. If you want to understand what Pompeii was like, you have to start there. It was the political, religious, and economic center of the city, not just a square. It was where justice was administered, deals were made, ceremonies were held, and it made clear who was in charge and how public life was organized. But there is a key detail. In the year 79, Pompeii was still being repaired. The earthquake of 62 had damaged public buildings, temples, houses, and streets, and many works were still underway 17 years later. That changes the image of the city a lot. We are not entering a perfect Pompeii, we are entering a living city that was still fixing what has happened before when something much worse happened. At the northern end of the forum stood the Temple of Jupiter. From there you saw the square, and behind it, Vesuvius. That alignment pretty much sums up of Pompeii. The mountain did not seem like a constant threat. It was part of the usual scenery of the city. It provided fertile soil, marked the horizon, and was so integrated into daily life that almost no one could imagine what it really meant. The basilica was very close by, and it's worth clarifying because the name is misleading. It wasn't a church. It was a large civil building, a space for trials, contracts, disputes, and business. If you imagine Pompeii as just frescoes, gardens, and elegant villas, you're falling short. It was also a practical city. Debts, lawsuits, sales, inheritances, administration. All that less showy part also supported the city. And when you leave the forum, Pompeii really changes. You leave behind the great political center and enter the day-to-day city. Narrow streets, raised sidewalks, stones to cross without stepping on mud, and cart ruts marked on the ground. That's where everything becomes much more real. Because you're no longer just looking at ancient buildings, you're seeing how a real Roman city worked. There were also bakeries, taverns, workshops, and thermopolia. Those points of sale where many people would eat or have a quick drink. Pompeii was dense, commercial, and highly visible. The thermal baths completed that image. They weren't some rare luxury. They were a normal part of urban life. People went there to wash, yes, but also to chat, learn news, and close deals. This is important as it helps get away from the topic. Roman private life didn't function like ours. Many social activities took place in shared spaces, and Pompeii has preserved them very well. If you want to see how the city had fun, you have to go to the amphitheater. It was built in the 10th century BC and is the oldest preserved stone amphitheater in the Roman world. It could bring together thousands of people, not only from Pompeii, but also from other nearby cities. That says a lot about the place. Pompeii wasn't just a commercial center, it also wanted spectacle, prestige, and a public presence on a home. And there's a fact that illustrates this very well. In the year 59, a game ended in a serious riot between the Pompeians and the inhabitants of Nuceria. The fight was so serious that Rome intervened. This shows the extent to which the amphitheater was a space of local identity, rivalry, and social tension, not just entertainment. Then there is the other Pompeii, the one with the spacious houses and suburban villas. The Villa of the Mysteries is the best-known example. Its frescoes remain among the most famous in all of antiquity and are often associated with rites linked to Dionysus, although the exact interpretation remains open. The villa also serves to illustrate something else: the distance between the street and the elite. In the urban center, mingling noise, constant traffic, and exposure predominated. In a large suburban residence, there was more space, more control, more decoration, and another way of displaying status. And this is where the story gains momentum. What we are going to see is not a motionless city awaiting its end. It is a city going about its business. A baker watching the oven. A merchant closing a deal. A magistrate with a lawsuit on his desk. Pompeii is impressive because its ending falls into a recognizable normality. There is still debate about the exact date of the eruption. For a long time, August was repeated, but various clues have reinforced the hypothesis of an autumn date. More important than pinpointing a specific day is understanding the sequence. Around noon, the Vesuvian volcano released a huge column of gases, ash, and pumice stone. At first, for many inhabitants, this must not have seemed like an immediate end. Pompeii was used to tremors. The volcano had been integrated into the landscape for generations. But this time, the column grew, ash began to fall, and the light changed. The city was faced with a new situation, and then the decisions began to be made. Raid or leave, go look for someone, or protect the house. Code or move quickly. Not visuals, or move quickly. The pumice stone piled up for hours. The roofs began to collapse. Moving around the city became more difficult. The darkness increased. Breathing became increasingly difficult. And just when some thought that the worst was over, that they could survive indoors, even more lethal phases of the eruption arrived. During the night and the following morning, pyroclastic currents and extreme heat came into play. Herculaneum, closest to the volcano, was hit hardest by these waves. Pompeii, a little further south, suffered first a heavy rain of palm stones, and then the final stages that completed the destruction. Today, we also know that the seismic activity associated with the eruption may have contributed to the collapse of some buildings and the deaths of some of the victims. That explains why the site is so powerful, faithful. It does not preserve a single, simple moment. It preserves different human responses to the same disaster. People who tried to escape. People who sought shelter. People who were trapped by landslides. People who believed that holding out for a few hours would be enough. Pompeii is not just the story of a buried city. It is also the story of how a community reacts when normal things stop working. After the eruption, there were still attempts to extract materials and recover valuables. But with the passage of time, Pompeii was buried and practically erased from memory. Everything changed in 1748. When systematic excavations began, and what was revealed was extraordinary. It was not just a group of ancient ruins. It was an almost complete city. Streets, businesses, altars, ovens, and courtyards. That's why Pompeii forever changed the way we study the Roman world. And so, the Vesuvians are no longer just the endgame. Moreover, this becomes the reason why we can still understand with such clarity how a Roman city was inhabited. That's the great contrast of Pompeii. The same eruption that destroyed it